Call to order the regular meeting of the Board of Education of Community Unit School District 201 today, Tuesday, October 26, 2010. If we could all, we could have a roll call, please.
Ms. Casey?
Here.
Mr. Charleston?
Here.
Mrs. Charlton?
Here.
Mrs. Hancock?
Here.
Mrs. Lubeck?
Here.
Mr. Price?
Here.
Mrs. Thomas?
Here.
We could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first item on the agenda is disposition of minutes, and we have quite a number today. First, March 23rd, 2010. This one is in your regular binder. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the March 23rd, 2010 special meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I
Any
abstain.
opposed? What?
I abstain.
Abstain, okay. The next one, March 23rd, 2010, this is in your orange folder. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the closed session of the March 23rd, 2010 special meeting of the Board of Education as presented. Again, that's in your orange folder.
So moved. I'll second to Joel.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
And I abstain.
Okay. The next is June 3rd, 2010. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the June 3rd, 2010 special meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
And I abstain.
Okay. The next one is in your orange folder. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the first set of minutes. You'll see it says set one. The first set of minutes of the closed session of the June 3rd, 2010 special meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I abstain.
The next one also is in your orange folder. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the second set of minutes of the closed session of the June 3rd, 2010 special meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I abstain.
The next set also in your orange folder. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the third set of minutes of the closed session of the June 3rd, 2010 special meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I abstain.
Okay, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the fourth set of minutes of the closed session of the June 3rd, 2010 special meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved.
Second.
I abstain.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
June 8th. This is in your regular binder. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the June 8th, 2010 special meeting with the Board of Education as presented.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
The next one's in your orange folder. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the closed session of the June 8th, 2010 special meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I abstain.
Now, June 15th, I'm sorry, in your orange folder. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the first closed session of the June 15th, 2010 regular meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I abstain.
The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the second closed set of the June 15, 2010 regular meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I abstain.
September 21st, 2010. This one is in your binder. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the September 21st, 2010 regular meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
October 5th, in your binder. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the October 5th, 2010 special meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And the last one, October 12th, 2010, in your binder. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the October 12th, 2010 regular meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. Public comment. Are there any public comments at this time? I would just like to make one quick little announcement. Mr. Liljeberg just informed us that, starting with our next board meeting, that our meetings will be live on the internet. So we'll be sending out a press release, but we just got that word from Glenn Liljeberg, so thank you for that. Okay, then administration under consent agenda. If you will look in your orange folder, just there is an amended personnel recommendation accepting the resignation of a teaching assistant and approve the retirement request of a full-time custodian. Are there any discussions on the consent agenda?
So I wanted to talk about the truck bid.
Truck, okay.
Yeah. I have some questions that probably are best for Mike, I think. And sorry for entering this process a little
no, that's
late,
fine.
so you'll
Yes,
have to
I-
catch me up.
My name's Mike Mayors. I'm the Director of Buildings and Grounds for Westmont School District.
Thank you.
So currently, the vehicle that we're scheduled to replace is a 3500.
That's correct, yes.
But
it
we
is.
went out to bid on an F450, which is substantially more truck than
Yeah,
what
it's
we're
actually, it's
replacing.
about 2,000, the payload capacity is about 2,000 more pounds. So that gives us the ability not to have to reload in midterm when we're salting our schools. So basically, hopefully it saves fuel and saves a little time. So the grounds guys don't have to basically salt, get half the buildings done, have to go back and restock their trucks. So that was a primary objective of that.
So you did an analysis on the payload and know that going up to this much larger truck is going to make that difference? Or we're sure we can't carry what we need to carry in a 3500? Or
Well, they can't, they're not comfortable filling it up to a full capacity to give them the ability to do all the lots at one time, so without having to come back and refill the truck again, so, and that was the objective on that, was to slightly increase the capacity so they could basically take care of that problem.
And did we get any bids or information on a comparable vehicle, or did we only look at larger vehicles?
We only looked at the larger.
As far as the bid information that came in, there's a pretty significant difference in both the base price as well as the trade-in value. And I was wondering if anybody could provide any insight on why those numbers are so different.
Well, I can talk to the truck only
Okay.
bid. And that portion of it, the one vendor bid based on their cost. The other vendor also happens to be a vendor through the State of Illinois Purchasing Program. So when they bid using the state buy program pricing on their bid. Now, and so that's where potentially the difference is on the bid and the truck only. And it stands to reason the whole purpose behind the State of Illinois Purchasing Program is that it is a program that allows municipalities and governmental entities to purchase items that they need, that the state has already gone out and done the bids and specs for the municipalities on their own and awarded these vendors those contracts. In terms of the trade-in value, I don't know why there was such a large discrepancy. If one, higher truck price, so higher trade-in, and they kind of net out, I'm not sure. The other one, I know that the vendor did not come and actually look at the truck that we were looking to trade in, and that's why we're recommending that we not do the trade-in component, that we do the purchase outright and then sell the truck on our own, because I think that we can get somewhere in between these two. I'm not sure that the high end is necessarily an accurate value based on when we've gone out and looked at like Edmunds pricing and done
Right,
some
yes,
things
we
kind
will.
of in the market to see where maybe that price might fall. And clearly the other one is way below what we would certainly expect to receive.
Okay. And then in this information, I don't see any detail. So the vehicle value, the upfitting value, what are the major components? It's just a price.
Of the bid truck on there.
Right.
Yeah, it's basically an XL on there. It doesn't, it just basically has the XL package on there, so whatever was included in that package. And then the only other things that were included on there were there's a snowplow package, and then the related equipment on there, the hydraulics and snowplow and snow spreader. So those are all included on that.
So we don't know between the price of these two vehicles how much is truck and how much is upfitting and really.
Well, I can only tell you off the Ford website on there, I believe the chassis cabin, that's basically just the truck without the dump body and any of the related accessories, was about $31,000. That's with the diesel engine included in that.
So why a diesel engine? That's about a $6,500 upgrade.
The diesel engine is on there. And, part of the thing is that our ability to plow heavy snow on the long runs that they have at like the high school parking lot, basically we feel is breaking down the current engine on there, so it doesn't feel comfortable. We just feel like it's putting a tremendous stress on the current motor that they have in the existing truck on there. So.
But we're also upgrading to a 450 with a larger engine, so do we still need to take a $6,500 diesel upgrade, or?
Well, they just thought for fuel economy and for torque, that was the better package to go on there. Just for snow plowing purposes, it gives you the best option available on there. Gas could have been looked at. I think they offered a V10 on there, so for fuel economy, I think the diesel actually offered you a little bit better package, and the torque was the main thing that we looked at on that too, just because it gives you such a great advantage with the torque of a diesel engine.
And as part of this process, is there an opportunity for us to just purchase or get a bid for the cabin chassis and then a separate for all the upfitting, or can we only do it as a package?
Well, when you're bidding, you can't, bid out different components.
Okay.
So we would need to specify all those different pieces and then ask for pricing in all of them. The other thing to consider is, do you want to go through the state buy or do you want to go through the bid process? Again, the direct bid process takes longer than state buy. I can call up tomorrow and get pricing. Bid process, we have to post legal notice, have to have it out there for, I forget the length of time, and then do a bid opening and pay for an ad in the newspaper again. So, clearly we can go back and look at, some other, the F-350, if that's what the board feels more comfortable with, and look at some other options, depending upon how long the process would take, depending upon what the board would decide, and then how long it would take to get a new equipment, if we did decide that we were gonna purchase something, we may still need to do some repairs to the current vehicle to get it winter ready. You know, just based on, that, you know, ordering a truck could take 2 weeks if they have it in stock, it could take 8 to 16 weeks. And again, it was one of those, we're moving forward with items that were in the 5-year capital plan and the capital projects. And again, coming to the board to see really where your comfort level is in terms of these expenditures.
Okay, thanks, Kim. So in terms of a 350 versus a 450, I mean, are we comfortable with a 350 and we want a 450? Or,
No, it
I
was
mean,
just
we've
a-
lasted 9 years.
And we
Do we
just
put-
discussed about what would better suit our needs, I guess. That was the only thing we looked at. I think the overall cost was about $2,000 more between the 350 and the 450. So, and that was on the chassis. I believe it was $29,000 on the chassis cab for the 350, and it was 31 for the 450. So as we looked at it on there, if we're looking for something that would meet our needs, that's what we were looking at. So, based on that, so.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
And one more question.
Yes.
When we sell our trucks outright rather than do the trade-in, where do we, or how do we go about selling them? I mean, do we advertise? Do we?
We can advertise through the IASBO website. We can do an advertisement in the paper. We can also call up some of these vendors and see if they're willing to purchase the vehicle.
Do we usually have pretty good success selling them outright?
I don't know I don't know what the success rate is in this district.
Okay, because, you know, my concern is
Mm-hmm.
taking the risk of doing that, and then what happens if we don't get any, you know, takers?
Well, I'm fairly confident that we can get a fair price for the vehicle.
Okay.
And you're thinking that would be more than the 71.59 difference between the two?
Well, that was just the price difference between the truck only. I'm thinking that, yes, I can come in lower than the low bid that was presented with using the truck and the trade-in.
Okay.
Any more questions? Okay. Then, Chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended, adding the personnel recommendations.
Marie,
Um,
so,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, just a matter of procedure.
Yes.
So this is all wrapped together. Is
The
that
consent
right?
agenda.
Pull it
if-
out for a separate vote if
So
you would like to.
I would like to
You would like to
pull the
pull
truck
that out
bid
for a
out
separate
for a
vote? Okay.
separate vote. Yes, please.
Okay, sure. Okay, then the chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended. Number 1, personnel recommendations, employment of staff, resignation of staff, retirement of staff. 2, approval of student tours. 3, approval of consortium for educational change membership. 4, release of closed session minutes and destruction of closed session audio recordings. Number 6, approval of donation of musical instruments. And 7, ratification of regular payroll.
So moved.
Is
Second.
there a second? Okay. Roll call, please.
Ms. Casey?
Yes.
Mr. Charleston?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes.
Mrs. Hancock?
Yes.
Mrs. Luback?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Okay, now we will take a vote on the issue of the review and award of truck bid. And
Before we
the
take
chair
a
will entertain a
vote,
motion
Marie,
to, I'm sorry.
before we take a vote, Shannon, can you please explain to me your concerns on the whole part of this bidding process in the truck?
A couple of pieces. The first one was that we were going for a larger vehicle than what we've had for the last 9 years. It seems to have served its purpose. So I was, wanting to get a better idea of if there's really a need to do that, or if it's more of a, it would be nice to do that because there is a cost difference. Same thing with going with the diesel, which again is a cost difference. And when you add those things up, you're getting closer to 10 grand cost difference. Also, just the pricing, Mike kind of mentioned the baseline price for the cabin chassis, which is before the upfitting, and that's pretty dramatically lower than the prices we got. I was also concerned that the prices we got seemed to be a little bit of apples and oranges because one bidder used the, what's it called,
The
Kim?
state buy,
The
because
state buy.
they are the vendor that was
Right.
awarded the state buy contract.
So, one vendor used a completely different process for pricing or for estimating or creating the bid. And then the difference in the trade-in value is, they're at complete opposite ends of what the vehicle's probably really worth. If you go and just do a basic search on it, somewhere right in the middle is probably what you could get for it. Both of the numbers that are on there make no sense at all. So just a lot of things didn't seem to be adding up, and I also wanted to hear from Mike to see if, we're trying to make fiscally conservative choices, and if we think we can sustain what we need to do with a 350, which is a comparable vehicle to what we're trading in, we should probably look at that realistically. We've had 9 years with that size vehicle, and there's some convenience things, and I know it'd be nicer to have a bigger truck, but I want to understand if that's really necessary. So those were the things that created questions for me.
Okay, so then if we vote on this and agree to not approve this bid, how are we moving forward?
I certainly would like to, I was under the impression, and Kim, correct me if I'm wrong, that we don't have to do a closed bid and go through that whole process when there's the state buy program, and could potentially go and solve this fairly quickly with Mike's support and still get a new vehicle. I think replacing assets on an appropriate cycle is the responsible thing to do.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that we're not
So-
overdoing it a little, sorry, Mike, or that we're, getting the best price that we can possibly get.
Right, so you won't get a better price on the F-450 through the state buy because that is the price. But would you like us then, if you vote no, to go look and price the 350?
As long as Mike is comfortable with that option, in spite of not being exactly what we would like, then
And
that would be my
diesel
preference.
versus non-diesel, or both, or?
Again, I'd like some comfort from Mike since he and his team have to use the equipment, but I certainly think if you go down to a 350, you don't have to have a diesel. Once you're up in the 450, you really have to have it to do what you want to do. But, it's all about money, right? It's all about what can we buy that is going to serve us for the next 10 years and serve us well, and we should make a conservative choice.
So
Well,
as a
I-
point of, then should we, so what you're asking the board then is maybe not just to review and award it, but to,
Table it until we get,
So I was under the impression that we have to make a yes or no decision. Kim, can you?
Yes, we need to
Right.
vote yes or no.
For
Okay.
these, on these two particular bids, that's not yes or no, do we get a truck? It's yes or no on this exact
okay.
line item. And if the answer is no, we potentially go a different route, look at a slightly different vehicle, try and get to a better place financially.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment. When I was listening to Mike, I didn't hear that this was something that we would like. I heard that they would be more efficient because they were able to put more salt in the truck and they would have to make less trips back to refill and reload. So what I'm hearing is that, if we're going to make a purchase at this time, why not get something that's going to make their jobs more efficient? And I'm all about, we have less staff, we're trying to do more with less. So I'm thinking that, if we're making a purchase, that we should give our staff the tools that they need. So I think that's something that we have to consider.
I think also it was a matter of they were concerned about loading the truck more. I think I heard you say they were nervous about loading it more, so.
Just multiple trips and exceeding the capacity, I guess, braking springs and things like that were a concern. So we didn't want to overdo the capacity, what we assume would be the safe capacity of the trucks.
Yeah, they don't want to overload the smaller one too much. Right.
So we'll take a vote on this and then,
Right, this is a
Everybody
yes, no
comfortable with
vote
that?
on this
Yes,
particular
okay.
bid, right? That's
And
my
and to be
understanding.
clear, this is money that is budgeted presently in the five-year capital plan out of the capital projects fund and the working cash fund that was funded via the bonds. This is not operating dollars.
Right.
Additionally, like that budget number for this year was 50,000. So on a net basis, we're below that number. The question is, can we be lower?
Right.
So, okay, I think I understand.
okay, are we done discussing? Okay. Then the chair will entertain a motion to approve the review and award of the truck bid.
So moved.
Second.
Second, okay. Roll call, please.
Mr. Charleston?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes.
Mrs. Hancock?
No.
Mrs. Luback?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Casey?
Yes.
Okay, so then we will move forward, awarding of the truck bid. Thank you, Shannon. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the permanent superintendent search. And what we have in front of us, in June of 2010, the Board of Education hired an interim superintendent and signed a one-year contract with Mr. Kevin Carey. And at the time, the board did put out a press release saying that we would intend to begin a search for a permanent superintendent. So at this point, it has been asked that the board discuss the steps that we need to take to hire a permanent superintendent. So, and I have been asked to, put together a summary of what we need to discuss in this process. I also have been asked to gather proposals from 4 search firms, and all board members have been sent those 4 proposals under separate cover. So what we have in front of us, each one of us has these, and I guess what, again, talking about finances, I, for my own sake, put together a chart of the different costs associated with it, and from my seat, I was basically astonished by the amount of money that this would cost. I put together for my own purposes, each company, their high and their low figure based on what they're charging. And it would be anywhere between, I have between $15,000 and $29,000. So I know that we have talked about hiring a permanent superintendent, and I think that is an important discussion to be had. I'm wondering, so number one, when a search should happen and what process do we want to follow? So I'm bringing that to the table and asking for that conversation to happen. We told our community that we would be searching for a superintendent, and I think we should. But I'm wondering if there's other ways to facilitate this that would be in the best interest of the district without spending this exorbitant amount of money. So if anybody would like to.
We have
Start
3
the
major
discussion.
conversations going on in the district, I think, aside from this. We've begun a process of looking, a fairly detailed process of looking at our facilities needs. We have an ongoing conversation about our economic situation, and we have a conversation that we've begun about strategic planning. I think we need to resolve the question of a superintendent in order to get through that stuff effectively. Permanent leadership there, I think, is, from my vantage point, is critical. So, my opinion about when to start, now. My opinion about the process is that I'm open to a conversation about what that looks like. But I think we need to resolve that for all parties, sometime before this spring, coming spring.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I'll add my 2 cents in here. I already shared with the board in part, some of my thoughts on this, but I think I would be more in favor of waiting. I don't like the timing because if we start a process, it'll end right before the election, and I think that's then like the drop dead date that we have to have this done by, or else we have to kind of start over again. And so I don't like it pushed up against the election cycle like that, and I believe the superintendent search, and we had discussed, during the process of hiring an interim, having more than 1 year on an interim position. And so I think we can review that if we choose to. And, these things, at least it's been my experience, when we embark on a process, it always takes us much longer than we anticipate. And, you can think back on hiring attorneys, that took 9 months. And just the budget cutting process in the spring took, I'd say, 3 months to kind of intense focus on. And this is a major decision, so I'd like to make sure we do it in a time frame that really allows us to focus and have that as more of a sole part of our energy. And you mentioned the things we do have going on, the strategic planning. We also have contract negotiations going on this year. That's another big activity that the board is involved with. And I think as far as the financial discussions, if we are going to approach talking about the budget, we need to start much earlier than we did last year. We should really move those conversations up and focus on that, because I think that is going to be a big thing. I have concerns about the cost of the professional search. And, when you think about this isn't going to be money that's going to be coming out of the bond proceeds. This is going to be coming out of, another fund that we didn't really, I guess, plan on. So I would like the board to consider postponing it or reviewing other options we have available to us for extending the interim position or another option. And I think if we were to ask other boards out there and approach them and say, if you had an opportunity to work with a superintendent before you actually hired them, would you appreciate having that type of opportunity? And I bet most board members would say, yeah, that would really make the decision process easier. And so I think we do, in the context that we did hire a full-time interim superintendent as opposed to a retired individual who would only be serving the district probably several days, or a team of superintendents that would be serving full-time. This does present kind of a unique situation for us, and I think we should review that fully before we make a final decision that we're going to go one direction or another. I guess those are my comments on it.
Okay, thank you, Joel. Anybody?
Well, my comments that I had shared with the board was that when we had done the initial search, we had advertised that as an interim. And having done that, I don't feel that we had got the full spectrum of candidates that we could have. And so I feel that we should do a full search. No offense. And I also feel that we also said to the community that we would do a full search. And so I do feel that we should hold true to that promise that we made to the community. And also when we discussed this as a board, when we made the decision to do this, we had said to each other that we would hold each other accountable, and that when it came time to make this decision, that we would remind each other that we made a promise to the community that we would do a full search and make sure that we involved the community. And I feel that I have to publicly remind us all that we made that promise to the community, and I feel, that we should do the full search. And lastly, while the cost is something that is a little bit difficult to swallow right now, I feel that we do need a professional group to help us with this, because they have the expertise. We do not. All of the proposals had given pretty much a similar process. To me, that shows that that's best practice. They will give us the timeline. They'll help us to work through a timeline. They will hold us accountable to that timeline. If we try to do it ourselves, we run the risk of not doing the best job possible. They're the ones that are professionals. They have the expertise. I think that they'll help us to do the best job possible. And those are my thoughts.
I know when we went into that process of the interim superintendent, we did say to the public, to ourselves, that we were going to, like you said, Kathy, continue this forward and go with the full search. And going through these proposals, I couldn't help but be struck by the cost and the fact that our budget is bleeding a bit. And then, going into January and December, we're going to be having some really difficult conversations about what has to go and what can stay. And to me, this dollar amount is the difference between somebody's raise or something. It put me in a thought in my head that as I look forward into what we do after we picked a search firm, the top 5 things I would be looking for, I feel I have. So it's put me in a spot that I didn't think I'd be in.
I understand your feelings, and I struggle with that as well. But when you're talking about, the leader of our district, like you mentioned, we have a lot of things on our plate right now, a lot of things that we're going to be moving forward on. Those are all very important, and we want to make sure that that the community has the leader in place that they want. And, and Mr. Carey may very well be that person. We don't know. We hope that he applies for the position. But I think that we owe it to the community to do the full search. As I mentioned before, when we advertised for the interim, it was advertised as an interim, and we only got a handful of applicants because it was advertised that way. I think we would be doing a disservice to the community if we didn't do the full search, and I also think that we would be doing a disservice to the community if we didn't hire a search firm to help us with that, because we are not all qualified to do this process ourselves.
Can I interject one thing, just because I did want to pull out, because I was thinking exactly the same way as you did, Kathy, and Diane's talking about. So I did pull out our press release and what we talked about. And what we said was, in the near future, the board intends to begin the search for a permanent superintendent. That search will be more comprehensive, and it will include parents, teachers, and community members. More information will be forthcoming, which is why I brought that out, because I think if we're so far, and of course we haven't heard from everybody yet, that maybe there's other ways to do that than spending this kind of money in terms of perhaps we could start with a survey to our community. The exact people that we talked about when we put this out, saying, what are we looking for and what are we lacking, and go from there. That's just, when, like I said, I wanted to look and see what we talked about before too, so I'm just bringing that to the table.
These firms, they help you with that, and quite frankly, I mean, IASB, I think was the least expensive of them all. And, you know, I would be open to considering them. I looked more thoroughly at their proposal, and at first I wasn't sure, because I had thought, gee, they are quite low. And so that kind of scared me for a minute. I thought, why are they so low? But then after I went through and looked at it more thoroughly and looked at some of the communities or some of the districts that had used them, I thought, you know, since we are in a budget crunch situation, rather than not have any guidance, I would be open to using them.
Well, the ISB comes in between 12.5 and 16.5, if you look at their, everything they did, so that's still.
But you don't have to use all their components.
Correct. I'm looking at what they,
Right.
what they give, so I just wanted to add that piece, so we still haven't heard. Are you done, Kathy?
Pardon?
I didn't want to say, I just want to ask if
Yeah.
you're finished, okay. Okay, Kathy, Shannon, we haven't heard?
Yeah, timeline, I have spoken to a few different districts recently that have done searches, and one is our neighboring district. They started their search September 14th, and they completed it on December 14th using a search firm. And they actually used the search firm of Hazard Young and Attia and Associates. And they had great things to say about that firm. I also have talked with 2 other districts that have used IASB, because I was very concerned about IASB, knowing that they would come in at the lowest proposal amount. Again, great recommendation, very happy with the outcome of their survey. I talked with both candidates that used IASB and with boards that use them as their search firm. I have no doubt that we need to use a search firm for various reasons that I've explained before. We had no problem. Well, there would be no problem staying on task if we used a search firm, unlike what we've experienced in the past trying to do this on our own. Extremely difficult. We've been through this. So, and again, I have to reiterate, we don't really know what we're looking for. There's 7 of us. We each have our own idea. We need someone to bring those ideas together and to hone in on what the specifics are. And I don't think we do that well together, the 7 of us, at this point. And I could be wrong, but I would really love individual set of eyes on this, someone on the outside, like you've suggested with the strategic plan. You didn't want somebody on the inside doing it. So we've hired somebody from the outside to do it, and we're spending dollars there.
Are you finished, Kathy?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm looking through my notes.
Sorry.
The other thing, the piece about if we delay this for another year, we're still going to have the budget problem. The money's still going to be a question of where is it coming from. I think we have to bite the bullet on this one and spend the money to do it, and to do it right. I mean, this is the most important part of this district, the leader of the district. Most important piece.
Okay. You're finished? Okay. Shannon?
Okay, so I don't think that when we've talked previously about this, that we've explored all of our options, and you alluded to that a little bit. So that's something that I think we should consider a little more seriously, other suggestions that were put on the table in previous discussions and really what our options are. I hate to go back and beat a dead horse, and I don't want to steal Dan's path to a balanced budget line because I don't think anyone can take more than one person with that mantra.
You're free to own that as well.
But, you know, when I think about the community and I think about my family and families that I know, and talk about what are we spending money on, what are we spending their money on, what are we spending our own money on, what kind of choices are we making in our homes, I think that people are making very conservative, very difficult financial choices, and that may end up meaning that we don't or should consider not making this kind of investment when we're in as much financial dire straits as we are. That said, I think we should be talking in more clear and concise terms about all of the options that we may have available to us. I mean, there isn't any, real restrictions or process on what we have to do, should do, can't do. And I think it's important that we consider all of the options, some that were voiced previously and not really considered at the time, should maybe be back on the table for discussion.
And what other options are those?
Well, I think Kathy mentioned extending for a year. I think that there are other things that we can be doing based on candidates you've already seen, based on person that's in place currently.
When extending it for a year solves what issue?
Well, and I don't know that I advocate extending it for a year necessarily, but we've talked about moving forward with our interim person. We've talked about extending the interim position. We've talked about doing a search at various levels, whether, a cost like this or something less. Marie has just suggested another option that we've never discussed, which is going to the community with the current person and saying, does this person meet our needs? When we talk about serving the community, I wasn't part of the process previously, so I'm come from a different place in this, my opinion. But I don't know. I mean, if I went out to the community and said, do you want me to spend $20,000 finding a new person, or, do we move forward in a different direction?
It doesn't have to be 20,000.
Well, 10. Say 10. Let's take the most conservative number you possibly can. Do you want me to spend 10 grand doing this, or, even less? It's money. And Diane said something that kind of hits home for me, which is if it's 10 or 15 or 20, pick the number you're comfortable with. What could we use that money for? My same argument with the truck was no offense at all intended for our facilities team, who does a fabulous job, but what else could we use that money for? And it's just the opportunity cost, and I'm just trying to figure out, is there a better way we can apply that money that's going to come to the best conclusion possible for what we're trying to do? So that's my concern.
I sit here and I have to say this. For us to sit here and be debating between 10 and 20,000 after what just happened money-wise with the outgoing superintendent, I've got huge issues. Huge issues.
So I wasn't part of that, and I don't know the details, so I can't.
I understand.
Really not in a position to speak to that particularly. I'm kind of a today forward. I can't comment on decisions that were made previously or how those decisions were.
Well, and I also go back to the fact that, we made a promise to each other to hold each other accountable, to do this process, and to involve the community.
Can I just, having heard all of these things, everybody here, I think this is one of the best discussions I think that we've had, and I think that's a good piece, which is why, Kathy, I went and looked to see what we said that we were going to do. And so I think if we kind of look at all the things that people are talking about here, number one, we did tell each other that we were going to be accountable to each other. So that's what we're doing right now. So we are talking about this discussion because we did bring in an interim superintendent and we said we were going to talk about permanent. So we're doing that right now. Number two, I think if we kind of start thinking about a survey situation, we could do the survey of twofold, a couple of different ways. what are we looking for and what are we lacking? I mean, the one thing that Diane said that I think I feel too is, what do we not have with what we have in place right now? And I think that's another piece of accountability. Kathy, if you have brought up a great point. We did advertise for interim, and we had 25 or 30 people apply. That,
If even that.
well, we had that. So we hired somebody who we have in place right now, and again, so what are we lacking? And
A
in
permanent
that, and
superintendent.
So, well, and then I guess I go to the next ways is, one of the things that we are supposed to do as a board is use the finances that we have in a fiscally responsible way. And what if we go through this whole search and spend a lot of time, energy, and money, and we could end up with our current interim superintendent as a superintendent. And I'm not saying that's bad. I'm not putting a value on that at all. As a matter of fact, I agree with Diane. When I look at all of the things that they're talking about in these proposals, I would say that I think that we have some of this right here, and if we do a survey to our community and staff and our parents, teachers, and community members, just like we said, we ask, we say, this is not our money, we're entrusted with the money of our community to do the best job with it. So at this time, yes, it's extremely important. It's probably the biggest important that the board can make. But my question is, what do we not have that we are looking for? And so that's why my initial comment was, in terms of when do we do a search, I think we're all talking that, well, maybe that we should have that now. But the question is there another way to do this that we bring in? And this might be a way that the 7 of us can work together. Shannon obviously is new, but maybe this would be a way that we could work together as a board, since ultimately this is the board decision, but that we would get input from our constituents. So that's why I'm asking. I mean, the cheapest on here, I mean, it's interesting. The HYA company, they went from $19,300 to $29,000. So there's so much we could do with that money. And yet it doesn't, I don't think it takes it off of the board saying that we shouldn't do the search. We're talking about it right now. How do we do the search to get the leader of the district, to get the best person in the position for our district? Maybe one thing we could do is ask our community, what are we looking for and what are we lacking with what we have in place right now? I'm not saying that's, you know.
Right, but they do that as part of the process when they work on the leadership profile part of it, and that first part of the process. You know, that's part of what they do. They survey
In
the
a timely
community.
fashion.
Well, and I'm suggesting that maybe this board, I think everybody here brings a lot to the table, that maybe we could do that ourselves.
You already, I mean, we've already had the discussion here that we're all overwhelmed already with everything that's on our plate, and now you want to take on this as well? Is that what you're saying?
We're going to have to take it on anyway if we bring in a search firm.
Not in the great detail that you're discussing if we were to hire somebody to do this for us. If we were to do this, Marie, as a board and not have anybody assist us with this, it will take us a very long time. A very long time.
Doesn't have to.
Right, because we don't
It will.
actually do the hands-on part of it. That's what you're paying them to do. They, you know, we are part of the process, but we don't actually do the work.
And I'm right there with you. I'm just concerned about, that is the first step, but that's after we hire somebody. And I'm asking is if there's another way to facilitate the end result of bringing in a permanent superintendent without spending this kind of money.
I'll observe just for a second that I've heard said to me that the two primary roles of a school board, their two biggest jobs, if you will, are hiring a superintendent and managing their budget. Two most important things I think a school board can do. Interestingly, I think they stand in juxtaposition to each other in the economic sense. One is about spending money or finding an appropriate place to spend it in its leadership. The second is about finding ways to save it and be efficient with it and, if you will, cut things and all that kind of stuff. And so they sort of stand in juxtaposition to each other. But both, I think, are core to the function of a board. So, from my vantage point, again, I jumped off with, I think we need to do it now. I didn't address myself to the question of whether or not to use a search firm. I will, address myself to it now. I think we should, but I think we need to avail ourselves of the menu of options so as to limit the cost of that search so that, we take on portions of that process that we can reasonably, but that we use professionals in this space to do parts of it that are appropriate for professionals in this space to do. Clearly, the IASB is the least expensive option. They have several other alternatives even within their options. So even though they stated, sort of a number at 10 to 15, depending on costs and expenses, you could theoretically do it for less. But, in terms of the actual professional screening, the accumulation of resumes, the conversations about, pulling together thoughts about what the district wants in its leadership. There's, and Kathy mentioned it, we have a strategic planning facilitator for a reason. I think this, because the strategic plan is important enough that an independent set of eyes and an independent voice in quarterbacking that process, in my view, was worthwhile. In my view, because this is core to what a board does, that independent quarterbacking function is worthwhile. I hate, and I hear, I feel deeply the economic concern, even at $5,000, $10,000, if we can keep it that low. I realize it's money spent. But given the importance of the decision, I think it's worth going through that process. I'll observe as well that I was personally very pleased with the range of applicants that we got for the interim thing. Doesn't mean that, obviously, we advertise as interim, so we didn't get, perhaps a wider range, but I am eminently happy with the outcome of that interim search. And so I think it's important for me to say that out loud as well. But, so, I think now is good. I think the IASB is wonderful. And I think we should consider what parts of their menu we avail ourselves of. And I don't know that we resolve that tonight, but it's just, that's where my head is.
The initial cost for the ISB starts at, because I did spend quite a bit of time looking through all this, starts at about $5,000. And then you go from there in terms of, then it's like an a la carte where you bring in, for every time that they come in, there's a fee for that, $1,000 a day, something like that. So I think even if we went with the ISB, which is the lowest, I think it doesn't look like we're going to get it anywhere under $10,000. Based on their proposal now. I mean,
Yeah, well,
I'm not sure.
actually you could, because there's a couple ways. You don't need to do the addition, you don't need to do the,
If
you do online surveys. I think you should do all that first part in B in their menu. I don't necessarily think you need two consultants in step E,
Right.
I don't necessarily think that the optional module E is necessarily a wise use of
No.
funds. So, with that said, there are clearly incidental expenses in terms of the advertising costs and other stuff. But taking those steps out, or at least modifying them, I think you can come very close to sort of a 10 number without going over it.
Which options did you say that you didn't necessarily think were necessary?
Yeah, I thought the highlighted items on B were fine. I wasn't enamored with the notion of 2 consultants interview in E. I think one, that we know and that we've picked and who's working with us on a dedicated basis. My quarterback, if you will. I don't need 2 quarterbacks. One works just fine. I'd be happy to have one person do that. And then, in terms of that other highlighted item down in I, I don't necessarily think that that's a particularly good use of dollars there.
So let's go back around the table and see, back to, so now we've had the discussion in terms of preliminary about where we are. Are we comfortable with that? Does anybody else have anything to add? In terms
Well,
of,
I mean, as far as bringing it into next year, like I said before, I think that does afford us more time to focus on it, rather than mixing it in with all the other things we have going on. And I don't see it as necessarily costing more to do that, because we'll have a superintendent either way.
Actually, I want to modify, I'm sorry about Joel, about interrupting you, but there is one highlighted item in B that I don't necessarily think we need a multi-page fancy brochure.
Well, we have one,
Yeah.
so we don't need
Spend the
to
money.
do it.
So.
Yeah.
And then, just to finish up, the notion that we owe our community a search, I don't know if that's necessarily the case. I think we owe our community a thoughtful process, and we owe them a superintendent that they can approach and engage, and we owe our staff and teachers the same thing, and solid educational leadership. We owe ourselves a superintendent who works well and equally with all of us. And so, just on the short, form, I'm very happy with the interim leadership that I've seen so far. And that doesn't mean I'm, my mind is made up on anything yet, but I don't feel that we have to push forward with a search right away. Just brainstorming a little bit, another path to some of the things we're talking about could be that we do a board self-evaluation with IASB, have them come in and we talk about this particular topic. It would and see if we can come to some further thoughts on it. There's a lot of ways to go about this. We could, again, thinking out loud, non-traditional. Kevin has a list of goals. We could update that. We could do an evaluation after a time period and make a decision based on an evaluation period. I mean, it's kind of, in the sense of the word, what we're in. If Kevin ends up being a candidate, we have a long, extended evaluation period, which many boards, they don't have that luxury, and it really is a luxury. It's one of the outcomes of hiring a full-time interim. So those are just further thoughts that I thought I would toss out there.
Well, to be fair to Kevin and to the community, I think it would almost be better to move forward on the search and get it done, because if he applies, then, he can rest easy with the process being fulfilled and being done and know which way, he's going to. So, you could look at it both ways. And then also, as I said, I would like to fulfill the obligation and the responsibility that we put forth to the community as well.
One thing I'm thinking of as I'm hearing this is that I don't necessarily equate using a search firm with that equals better. I think if we want to talk about this further as a board, I also would like to weigh in that I think that we should move forward for a permanent, to have this as a permanent position, to move forward to search for a permanent superintendent, what I'm saying. But I think that I would like to talk about other ways to facilitate this that are in the best interest of our district, looking at, we're going to be looking at $500,000 or $600,000 or $700,000 in budget cuts. This time is going to be harder than the last time. And bringing up something that Shannon said before, this is not our money that we have. And I say, I would like to have further, my opinion is that I would like to find a way for us as a board to take our duty very seriously in hiring a permanent superintendent my question goes to, I would think that the reason you go to a search firm is to bring a superintendent that is the best for your district. And I think if we reach out to our community in some way without spending $5,000 or $10,000 or $15,000, we are asking, what are we looking for and what are we lacking? And again, one of the search firms I don't think is the only way. It's not, I don't see it as the best way. I think if it was a couple of years ago and we did not have the situation that we have in front of us in terms of our economy and where we are with the state, then I think we're in a different position. But I would like to find a way for us to talk about doing exactly what we promised, and that is doing a search for a permanent superintendent but not spending this kind of money. I'm very, very, very uncomfortable with this amount of money.
All right, how do we put a motion on the table to move forward from this?
I just want to make
Well,
one
I want to make
comment.
sure that we have everybody.
I just want to make one very quick comment. So just pulling out the IASB proposal and looking at kind of the slimmed down version of what they offer, we're at $6,000 or $7,000 plus whatever expenses we have for the final candidates. So it is, when you look at what they have to offer and if they're a reasonable option, we probably can keep it very thin if it's a decision to go forward, which
I
don't know that I necessarily am all in on that, but I think if we're very careful and responsible with how we spend our money, it's certainly a better option than going with some of these private firms where the minimum we can get away from is twice that or more.
Well, and I don't think that that's much more than we spent on the strategic plan.
I'm sure.
Yeah, so, and I would like to make a motion to recommend IASB.
Well, I think we need to, first of all, I think we need to do this in order, is that we should vote on the step-by-step process in here, is that we make sure that we've heard from everybody, instead of jumping ahead, that we go step by step. So,
Don't we just have to pick a firm?
no, that's why it's separated into two separate pieces. It's step 1 and step 2, which is, so we should first discuss if we want to move forward with a superintendent search now.
We had,
So-
that discussion just took place, right?
Yeah, but we didn't vote. So we
Is there
should,
a vote?
so we should discuss that. Let's go around the table. Do we want to start with a search now?
I want to move forward now.
Diane, you want to move forward now? Kathy?
Is Judy taking the roll call?
It's not an official roll call,
No,
but,
just,
I see. Okay. Yes, I'd like to move forward now.
okay,
Now,
now? Joel?
I would like to wait.
Okay, Shannon? Just,
Now,
we're doing step by step,
Now.
okay? Now?
No.
Okay, and I'll say now as well. So we've agreed, the majority agrees that we're going to move forward now. So the next question then is, do we want to discuss one of the firms now, or do we want to discuss another way? So I guess let's have I will ask the question, do we want to have further discussions on this process? Do we want to have further discussions on this process?
No. I think we're ready to
Kathy?
make a motion on
No?
the firm.
Shannon?
no.
Joel?
I guess we're coming down to the decision of whether we're going to hire a firm. So, I mean, if everyone's leaning in that direction, maybe we should just jump ahead and say, I'm interested in that, skip the other part. I mean, I'm interested in exploring other options available to the
Okay.
board.
Dan?
I'm interested in hiring the ISB specifically.
Okay.
I don't know what the other options are that work for me, so.
Diane?
I'm more comfortable hiring a firm if we're going to do that moving forward. So ISB would be the one that I'm leaning towards.
Okay, Kathy?
I would like to move forward with a firm.
Okay. Then the majority, and I would like to look into further options. The majority is deciding that we're going to look forward, we're going to move on and look for a firm. So the question is, we have an option to bring in a firm to talk about, or do we just want to hire a firm? So if we want to move then to the next item on the agenda is approval to hire a search firm to facilitate superintendent search. Are we comfortable with that?
Well, I didn't really talk about the firm, so I'll go ahead and
Okay.
throw my 2 cents in again. It came down to 2 really for me, which was IASB and Linda Hansen, primarily because I think as a board, we have experience working with both of them, and I think that'll be an important component, that they understand some of our dynamics, a little bit of our history, and so if we're moving this direction, then I would be fine with IASB.
Just a
Any other-
comment. I think that, I believe it was Kathy that made the point in reviewing all the information that was submitted, there's a striking amount of similarity in every one of them. And, you know, given that, I'm not sure we need to look beyond what's there, or that we would need to hear from anybody, because obviously there's a strong consensus in the people that do this professionally that this is how you do it. So, also happy to hear that there are some folks who've used the ISB and they're happy with it. I think that that helps in the decision-making process.
Any other discussion on that, along that line? Okay. Then I move to approve to enter an agreement with the search firm of the IASB for purpose of facilitating a search for permanent superintendent as presented.
Let's talk about as presented for a second.
Right, there's some
Yeah.
variables here.
Right.
And so with respect to as presented, speaking personally, I'd like to eliminate this optional module A.
Yes.
Okay, let's go to that then. Why don't
Sure.
we, everybody on that
It's on
page then?
page 2 of their
Everybody there?
proposal.
Okay. So we'll start with the professional executive search. That's
Yep.
4,500. So that's, okay?
You know, with, they've highlighted as recommended, optional module A, which I think we already have enough information available via both our website and print to be pretty open about who we are. So
Are we in agreement
I'd
on that one?
be in favor of eliminating that.
So we'll take out A,
Correct.
okay?
I'm inclined to reduce optional module D to
Wait, we've
1.
got to go back to B, staff and
Oh, yeah,
community
yeah.
online
I'm sorry.
surveys, $500.
So we're going to keep module B.
Yeah, we're going to do that, yeah. We're gonna.
Keep that one.
Well, we're going to keep I would recommend keeping the remainder, including the highlighted staff, staff and/or community surveys and/or in-district interviews.
No.
So just, again, a human touch
Right.
into the district
Right.
vis-a-vis the consultant.
So that's an additional.
Before they screen,
Right,
before they're
before they-
screening
right.
candidates. So
So that's
I'm
under
in favor
module
of
B.
doing that. Yep, and that's in B3, optional module B. Let's do optional module B as presented.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah, hang on.
Let's talk about that. That says an additional $1,000 per day per consultant.
Right. That's
So-
runaway cost. I'm concerned about that.
Yes,
Oh,
okay.
That's key, though. That brings in one of their people to come into our district and to have dialogue with the community.
Right.
I mean,
No,
and that's
So we just need to agree.
Limited to 1 day.
That's
That's
what we're saying.
fine.
day.
I
One
wanna
day,
make
one person?
sure-
That's all she meant.
Yeah, I want to make sure that
Okay.
there's
Right.
this is the
That was my
maximum that
assumption.
hits that
Absolutely.
line item, not that it just goes on into whatever.
Are we saying one day, one person?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm okay.
I would say we would target that. I mean, I hate to set, like, this is going to be the firm exactly the way it's going to be, because we may get into this and then say, well, we really could use. So I think we should be open-minded enough to say, that we could possibly alter what we're laying out here.
Sure. I mean, we can always revisit it.
We could.
Yeah.
Yes, because we're going to
Especially when
be,
they come to us and we have this conversation and
Yeah.
really put down the timeline. So can we just modify the vote right now to just, can we broaden it to not be so specific?
well, no, I think we need to do this because if we're going to do this and then tomorrow I'm going to be in touch with them, we need to talk to them about what it is.
Yeah, I think
they would
there's.
even do it.
I
I
think
mean-
there's an initial scope conversation
Right.
that we have to have with them. And then if, and just so that they're clear, here's the scope that we've approved.
Initially.
And to the
then we
extent
can
that
always
there's-
Initially,
revisit it.
exactly.
Yeah, and to the
Yeah, so I
extent
think
that we need to alter that, it's effectively sort of a change order kind of thing.
Right, so that's why we're good with that? Okay. So then the next thing is, in terms of money, option D, 2 consultants interview semifinalists, an additional $2,000.
1 is just fine.
What do we,
Can I just say one thing about
Yeah.
that? Sometimes it's good to have just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's good to have 2 different perspectives, and they talk amongst themselves. I'm just saying.
I know.
I'm sorry.
I hear you. I'm still at 1.
That's a down-the-road question, too.
Should we-
I think.
I
What
would
do we
like,
think?
I would like to ask them if one is half the price and.
We can
This
ask
is,
them.
this is really just to find out what it is, if we only want to use one
Okay.
person, and.
Okay.
This is just to interview the semifinalists, so this isn't.
Right.
I mean, this is really just an independent person to go through that process.
okay? And then in terms of money, optional module E, in-district mock interview session with the board, $1,000 a day. Are
No
we
thanks.
crossing that out?
Been
I
down
don't know
road
that we
already.
need
Okay,
the module E. Do you? I don't think we
Okay.
do. No.
okay, so, we are in agreement, I mean, we'll do a motion as presented.
As amended.
As discussed, as amended,
As
however you want to.
amended, well, as
discussed.
amended pursuant to follow-up conversations with the IASB.
Well, I'll tell you what, why don't we get a final, based on these discussions? Let's approve the ISB tonight. My suggestion would be, let's approve the ISB tonight, and then get them to actually proffer us a proposal that's, that follows what we actually have outlined here tonight, so that we can actually approve that agreement as it's presented, right?
And will that be in time for the next board meeting?
Oh, I'm sure it would be.
When's the next board meeting?
November 16th.
16th.
The 16th.
November 16th.
Well, I mean, okay, yeah.
So what do we think about that?
Pushing and pushing, right?
I know, well, I'm
Calendar's
thinking we
marching
could.
along here.
It's a time tick, tick, tick.
Thanksgiving, Christmas,
So,
New Year's,
Yeah, I'm just wondering.
elections.
We're starting to get into a
Okay,
weird spot.
what, I'm sorry. What do we, discuss this again?
Okay.
Just the
My-
conversation that you guys were just having, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. My thought is, I'd like to approve working with the ISB
Okay,
to put together a firm proposal with, that has a scope that we've talked about,
okay,
so that we know what that looks like, and we can agree to that particular scope, as opposed to, this.
okay.
So effectively, let's approve the ISB tonight under these, if you will, general parameters, but then agree that they're going to proffer a specific proposal with a specific scope, based on what we've talked about, that we can approve at the next meeting.
Well, how about this? Assuming that they would do this,
Yeah.
if they don't, maybe we could have a short board meeting.
Well, I think that I don't see any reason why they wouldn't agree to our changes, and
That's-
I'm also thinking that we're going to need to schedule a meeting with them to
Right.
establish the timeline.
So if you look on
Yeah.
the next page,
Yeah.
Yes.
steps in the process,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
the very first thing, once the board approves the action to work with the ISB, which is, I'm assuming, the $4,500, right? That's the baseline. That's the,
Yeah.
we approve to work with them. The very first step then is meeting and establishing a timeline and perhaps at that point, scope and additional cost beyond the 4,500.
Mr. Carey, do we have a problem with doing that in that type of meeting? Or would that have to be an open meeting in order to discuss a different dollar amount?
It would have to be in an open meeting, right?
Yeah, but
Okay, then I just,
then you can go.
Which I think this has to be an open meeting anyway.
Yeah.
Right,
okay.
The first meeting with them.
right, the first meeting anyway, so at that
I
meeting,
would,
we
I
could,
guess I'm pushing more for, let's approve ISB, let's approve this amended thing that we have. Let's get that meeting going. Our calendar is.
Right.
Yeah,
ticking.
okay. Are we in agreement on that?
yeah.
Okay, so I move the approval to enter into an agreement with the search firm of the ISB for the purpose of facilitating a search for permanent superintendent pursuant to conversations with the ISB, its scope based on the discussion that we had this evening.
So moved.
Does that capture?
I think that does. Yes.
Okay,
Second.
okay. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Hancock,
Yes.
Mrs. Lubeck,
Yes,
Mr. Price,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas.
Yes.
Ms. Casey,
Yes.
Mr. Charleston,
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton.
Yes. Okay. We will move forward with that. We'll, and I just want to wrap this up by stating for the record the obvious that I think Kathy had alluded to and Diana had alluded to too, that Mr. Carey, this is no way reflection on you. It's just that we talked about this when we signed our contract with you, that we are going to be moving forward with a permanent superintendent search. Okay. Then the next item on the agenda is superintendent's report.
In your board book, I've highlighted, and just to update not only the board, but the community as well, we're at on some of our planning processes. Facility planning, the board completed their tours of all 5 buildings in the district. And the next step, Steve Cashman did get back to me today with 2 possible dates, and I'll make sure I email these to you so that I can get feedback. But November 9th and 11th is what he is looking at. And basically, again, that's an opportunity. That meeting would be open to the public as well. But that's an opportunity for the board. You didn't have a chance to debrief with Steve Cashman after the tour, so that's your opportunity to debrief with Steve. there will be opportunity for public comment as well. And in no way is this a decision-making meeting or, we want to make sure that's an open process. So this isn't in any shape, way, or form a decision-making, but rather just to continue the process, provide Steve with feedback, ask him additional questions, and then roll out from there, kind of the next steps of our process so that we can begin including other members of our school community in that process. Strategic planning, I forwarded to you.
Can I just add, so that will be, once we get the date, that will be an open meeting like
Right.
the others were?
Correct.
And so, okay,
Correct.
thank you.
And then with strategic planning, you had an opportunity to get an opportunity to provide Linda feedback on a community stakeholder survey. She did make some adjustments based upon board feedback. I forwarded that to you. So please, if there's additional feedback, get that back to me. And then Linda also indicated that she would like to get, if you remember, kind of a small steering committee, she'd like to get going with that group as well. So we'll be getting that little group up and running, and then as soon as we finalize the survey, that will be given to all of our stakeholders. And that really, for strategic planning, that's what drives the process, because that's going to identify the core areas that the district needs to focus on in the next 5 years. And so that's the next phase in that process. We did have our first discipline committee meeting on October 18th, and included in your board book are the minutes from that meeting. Steve Carr, our high school principal, facilitates that meeting, and probably the top two concerns that were voiced at the committee meeting were bullying, which I don't think is a unique conversation for our district. I think anything that you're seeing now that's prevalent in all school districts, and then also building security is also an issue as well, which, if you remember from the building tours, that was somewhat of a common theme in the building, amongst our building and building tours. So if you have any questions about the minutes, Steve is here. He's available for questions if you have any. And then, Steve, we haven't finalized yet dates for subsequent meetings, have we?
Well, I proposed December 13th and March 21st. We did talk about time, moving that back from 6 o'clock to 6:30, in hopes that, just to see if that is easier.
Can I ask a question on that? I know that those are Monday nights. Is there any possibility of doing a different night? Only because I know a lot of the PTOs always meet on Monday nights and stuff, and I don't know if these conflict with any of those, or if that makes a difference on the night of the week.
To me, it's just Monday nights. It's certainly something we can look at. Those aren't dates in stone.
Okay.
Just like some dates, because as you're well aware, it's hard to find a night that works for everybody. So certainly we can look at a different evening. Tuesdays are awful. Tuesdays and Fridays, obviously, for athletic reasons, and try to stay away from Wednesdays just historically. So we can take a look though.
Okay, thank you.
And then the one thing as well, it was a relatively small turnout for the meeting, so we did brainstorm some ways to do a better job of advertising that and to hopefully increase interest and get more individuals in attendance. So we'll be working on that. Wednesday, October 20th was the superintendent's coffee. And, for those who weren't in attendance, basically highlighted more the district's budget in terms of what we're looking at, expenditures, revenues, that we are looking at a deficit budget, and we're concerned about that. And I did assure those in attendance that it is the goal of the board to have a balanced budget, and they're working on that process to move in that direction. The next coffee, because we're running into, I think Shannon already alluded to this, you're running into the holiday season and those types of things. So between November and December, I'm going to select a date to have a coffee kind of for those 2 months. And the focus will be on the standardized test scores for our district, because they'll be made public. We'll be able to release those and have discussion about those. And then in turn, at the November meeting, I will bring that information to the board in the form of a presentation as well. So I'll share that with the board. So the next focus for the coffee will be those standardized test scores. And again, a little disappointed with the attendance, was down from the first one, but hopefully, through advertising and possibly the topic as well, there may be some interest from school families to attend, so I'm hoping that will bring more people to the coffee. RTI, just want to let the board know that we have formed a district RTI committee that is made up of our teaching staff and administrative staff. We had our first meeting next week. One of the things that we did, and I think it was a very good activity, was to take a look at what RTI looks like in each of our buildings, and I think all of us were pleasantly surprised that there are some similarities, but at the same time there are some differences which may not be problematic. It may be the unique needs of a building, which that's what we're going to be exploring, or in some cases we are looking to develop some consistency in our RTI process. And for the primary reason, when you start thinking about our parents and our students as they move through our district, it helps our students and parents transition from one school to the next when we're using a similar vocabulary, when the process is similar, so that you don't have the parents sometimes wondering why in one building they're receiving services, but it doesn't appear that they're receiving services in the next building. And it's not that they're not still receiving assistance, but it possibly is looking different or different models. So the more we can do to develop that consistency, I think the stronger our RTI program is going to be. And so we will be moving forward with those meetings, and our goal is to develop that consistency within our district for RTI. I also included for you, if you remember, the board has transitioned to a new law firm, and there were some special ed issues that were carryover from the previous firm. Many of those things are completed, and so we're kind of still in a transition. We will be still working with the old firm for some of those ongoing situations that still require attorney involvement, but then at the same time, any new special ed issues that we have that require legal advice, we will be working with the new law firm that we're working with.
Okay, it was my understanding that all special ed was staying with Franzik.
And I wish, obviously Linda's not here, and so I can ask Linda that question. When Linda came to me, my understanding, at least through Linda, was that we were, working with the old firm for some of those cases, but then we were transitioning to the new for the.
I'm
Was
pretty
that
sure it was.
Franzek's understanding, do you know?
I can check and see.
I think that's worthwhile.
Okay, sure. We can look into that.
Yeah.
It was my understanding that we were going to move in that direction, at least from conversations back when we brought in new counsel.
I don't know. I thought we were staying with the,
don't think
that was my recollection, is we were going to stay with the old firm, that we didn't
And that's
have
easy
any.
enough to do.
Immediately
That's the
going
case.
to, I know we weren't, the decision was not to immediately do anything because there was a lot of things kind of in the hopper, but.
Well, again, my
Worth looking at.
question ultimately is, it may just be that Franzek and that part of the practice, because we've moved away from them in terms of general practice, they may just be making a decision to move away, but I think we need to ask them that question.
Yeah,
Sure.
because it's my recollection that Franzik and Sullivan was going to continue to handle the special ed.
I just want to clarify, because I thought that, I guess what I'm asking, Dan, is we're asking Franzik if,
Because my recollection of it is that special ed was staying there. Unless they're initiating this conversation, or Linda's initiating this conversation.
Right.
If it's coming from either Linda or from Franzek, that a transition is the appropriate thing to do to the new firm, okay.
Yeah, but even if it's coming from staff, then that should be a discussion that then is brought to the board.
Sure,
yeah, okay, that's what
Sure.
I want, yeah, because I guess
sure.
my recollection was that we were wrapping up what we had and then.
It doesn't go directly from staff to the attorney, it goes from staff to the board.
Well, that's why I was
Board
asking
to
what
make that
Dan's,
decision.
what his thing was, because I don't know that it's also to ask the other firm what their recollection was either, because
Right.
that's why I'm saying, I think
Yeah.
we should
Yes, we
have
need to
that
check.
brought, yes, Okay, thank you.
I'll check into it and make sure that whatever the intent was, that the district follows through on the
Okay.
intent.
Thank you.
Junior high field trip, this is just kind of a consensus if the board is okay with this. It still will come before the board for official approval, but obviously, the teacher at the junior high has to do some groundwork and, you know, see where the student interest is. But Jason Prisney, an 8th grade social studies teacher, would like to organize a Washington trip for the 8th grade students. He came forward to Mr. Fiala. And so, again, you know, before he gets too far down that road, I just wanted to make sure that the, you know, any questions or objections the board may have, he'd have an opportunity to respond to those. And eventually that would, again, have to come before the board for official approval.
Is there any cost involved from?
Well, I'm sure on the student.
I mean, from
For the district, no.
district?
No.
I would say this is wonderful, and I would absolutely say thank you to Mr. Prisney for doing this, because if this is something that we had, that wasn't there in the
Is
past.
there an insurance event
State?
vis-a-vis an out-of-state trip sponsored by the,
I don't know, I would have to look into it and see
Oh, yeah.
exactly what our policy covers, and then depending upon the tour company, what type of insurance
Yeah.
coverage they have.
Because it gets directly to the, is there a cost question? So if it'd be worthwhile to know that.
Yeah, I will check into that.
And although I'm not against Mr. Prisney, not Mr. Prisney, Mr. Bolden coming forward, Mr. Prisney? Prisney coming forward and doing this.
Yeah, I had the-
Too many names in my head. My concern, though, is it's November, and you're having a group of 8th graders, I'm one of them, who this is going to be sprung on.
Right.
And it isn't, the last time it was done was senior class, which was also, or not, last time I did it was through the senior class. And that cost was not something I could just show up with tomorrow. Part of my concern is the timing, and being able, the advertising piece of that to the community hasn't been there. So the knowledge to that class isn't there. I didn't put aside money to plan for this, you know, number of
Sure,
things.
sure.
So my concern is that this coming forward for this year might be problematic.
Well, I guess I would ask a question. In the past, the board, you know, we have approved all kinds of trips. China, foreign countries, different states. I guess I wonder why this would be different. Because if we...
Well,
if-
like, though, the insurance is included in the cost that, of the trip, that the parents pay for all of that. It's all included in that.
I'm pretty sure the insurance is included in this trip as well. And the problem in the past with this trip is that it's on a bus, and you have to have like 50 students sign up for this in order for it to move forward. So I really would be surprised if that would happen with this small class.
It's a very small class.
So, just wondering if there could be another option for a different trip for this class, maybe a little closer to home.
Well, I guess the question comes in, this has obviously been something that has been talked about before, but until you, Diane brings up a great point, until you start asking the question, you don't know what you have. And I know from looking at this in the past, if you have less than 50, the cost might be a little bit more. If you have 50, the cost is X. And unless we give some direction on this, you're never going to know.
You know,
Right.
can I make a suggestion? I wonder if they could partner with another school.
And that may be, there may be that opportunity. I guess right now the question is it okay for, you know, Jason does need to find out how many students are interested and if it is even feasible. Does the board have any objection with them at least, you know, finding out where the interest level is, kind of going down that road, and then if it ends up either A, because of lack of interest, problematic, you know, if you can explore other opportunities.
Yeah,
I think it's great that he wants to
would
do
be-
it.
yeah. Do we
Yes,
agree
please
then?
encourage
Okay.
him
And
as
thank
much
you.
as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Prisney, for stepping forward with that. That's great.
And then you have copies of the FOIA requests as well as the most recent legislative report.
What did we do with that FOIA request?
The FOIA request actually, because it was sent to every school district in the state of Illinois, at the regional office of DuPage County Regional Office of Education actually offered a response for districts.
Single response for districts. Okay.
Right, that we could take and that we could utilize. So basically, it was so intensive in order to provide the information is what basically the response was.
Okay. Anything else then on that? Okay, then moving along to board reports. Are there any reports that board members have?
Yes, actually, I just wanted to make a couple comments. I'm sure you guys all read the Westmont Journal that Nancy Bartos had put together, and I just wanted to comment that I thought that was really well done, nicely put together, and I am just always amazed at the variety and how many volunteer opportunities our high school students have, and I'm sure that our elementary students have a lot of different opportunities as well, but does our community get to see this?
Steve, the report that Nancy put together, that's available online, isn't it?
It was posted online. We've done that. This is it's going to be our third one we've done like that. We posted it with our announcements. We posted it online. And our first official publication is going to go out to our in newsletter form. We're only doing 4 of them a year. It's really highlighting the online opportunities to know what's going on in our school with the blogs. Because more and more we're trying to use that electronic technology. It's cost effective and it's more timely. So that's Nancy's, we tried to take that online newsletter, the Westmont Journal Sentinel, a shameless relationship to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where I'm from. To bring the current happenings at the school, how many people are actually getting it until they know that it's there is one of the dilemmas of the online medium that we're in. Hopefully, as that first publication goes out to all the homes, they'll know that it's out there, they'll backtrack, they'll log in, they'll get on our blog sites, they'll realize that these kind of things, we're trying to feed that to people. Rather than make it difficult for them to have to wait for the media, or wait for the mail, or have to go somewhere. But it is available online.
Okay, well, it's fantastic. It's a really great publication. And then I also wanted to thank you, Steve, for the letter that you sent out to the families regarding the drill. Thank you for that. And also I wanted to comment on the winter coat drive that the Village of Westmont is doing. Thank you so much for the district to allow us to advertise this for 3 weeks, October 25th through November 17th. We're collecting coats of all sizes, and they're going to be donated to Downers Grove Fish, which services families in Downers Grove, Westmont, and Lisle. And so any coats that you have, new or gently used, please bring them either to the Village Hall, the Fire Department, or the Police Department. Thank you. That's it.
All right, just as a quick follow-up, I know I had emailed a comment to you about the drill and the cell phone issue and, the perils of that situation or the things that could possibly go wrong in some situation like that. And I just wanted to say out loud that I think it would be a good idea that we get that message out to the junior high and even the upper grades at the elementary schools so that they are aware of this situation and parents can talk to their kids about, the importance of cell phone usage in school and, things that can go wrong when you play a prank. So I hope that the administration takes that up.
Right, we're going to discuss that as administrative team.
Okay, great. And just, the policy committee did meet, and I think one of the things that we were kind of struggling with is how the policies come to us is typically the IASB sends these revisions to policy manuals to all the districts, and then you look through them and see, is this something you want to adopt? Is it not? They come with recommendations like this one you should adopt, and this one is, maybe if you want to. And when we look at our policy, the way we date things, it almost sometimes looks like these policies never get updated. So I think Kathy and I thought that it's a good idea that when we bring one of these policies and say it was 2004, well, between 2004 and 2010, IASB might have sent out 3 or 4 updates to that policy, which can dramatically change it in wording, and you don't really know. You're like, well, why is this so different? And so if we add onto the policies that they're at least reviewed, so that adds another date to it. So it shows between 2004 and 2010 that the policy was at least reviewed, in 2007 or 2009, so that you have a record, because you can have drift that occurs from what our policy manual says to what the recommendation is from IASB, based on the fact that many of the changes were minor and you didn't bother making them, and but to put a review date does at least let people know that the policy manual is a living thing and you are constantly updating it and at least
And looking at it, and that we reviewed it, but we just decided not to make the changes.
Right.
Right.
That makes sense. That's,
So I think that's something that we thought was worthwhile to initiate.
Right, because we looked at a lot of them, and some we decided, we're not going to make the changes, and some we did, so, yeah. we're
Sometimes the
gonna
changes are very minuscule.
Right.
well, thank you for that. And is that something that,
We're going to do on these,
when we
all of
do
the
the-
ones that we reviewed
Right.
this last time. Yeah.
anything else?
I just wanted to, we were fortunate enough to have the junior high newsletter in our orange folder tonight, and there's a really nice article on fostering literacy at the junior high and the reading lounge they put in, and I just wanted to, recognize the efforts they're making. Literacy is a big issue that we, all over the state, constantly wanting to improve, in our district as well, and, it's a very creative, unique thing that they've done there, and they're very proud of it. And I had an opportunity last week to see it in action, and the kids do genuinely appear to enjoy being able to take advantage of that space. And in the absence of Mr. Fiala being here, he loves to have parents and community members come in and read during the school day so that the students can see parents and adults reading. So if anybody has the opportunity to do that, you're going to read anyway, you might as well go sit over in a beanbag chair and, relive your youth.
Okay, that brings up a good point. Are these available online, do we know?
I'd have to check and see if he's
Okay,
put that out.
because we have this great tool for the high school.
Panther Prints is usually on the junior high website. I don't know how quickly it
Okay.
gets up there, but
Yeah.
it's,
Generally on the website,
Okay,
the
great.
school website.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, and I guess I would just ask one quick thing, asking the board if the board wanted to be involved in the holidays parade this year, as some of us did last year, then, so I will send an email around to everybody, see if everyone is interested. The ceremonies are Friday, November 26th, and it's a wonderful opportunity for the board to be out. And so I'll send an email tomorrow if anyone's interested, and check your calendars in terms of travel, and maybe we could walk in the parade. Okay, special education? Yes, Joel?
Okay. The last SASD meeting was September 25th, and there were presentations concerning SASD's summer school programs, primarily the two larger programs, which is visually impaired program, which services 142 students, and there's 84 staff members that participate in that month-long. I think it was pretty much the whole month of July. And students work, obviously, on Braille, and writing skills are stressed, and they spend a lot of time on reading and improving proficiency at reading. And students worked on math as well, and they use different tools like an abacus instead of paper and pencil, and they use special calculators, and they spend a lot of time focused on working with money. I think that would be a very challenging aspect of being visually impaired. They did a functional math project which involved opening a bagel shop, so they had to handle money, they had to do measuring, cooking, and so that was kind of a functional math thing for the kids, project for the kids to work on. And a local Kiwanis club came in and helped the students build a woodworking project, which was like a CD carrying case out of wood. So they helped them with the hammering and the woodworking talents that are required for that. For the visually impaired students, progress towards literacy and math IEP goals are measured as a baseline when the students first start the program, and then weekly thereafter. And it was reported that 100% of the students met their goals for summer school. The regular ES summer school extended school year program serviced 290 students, and there was 165 staff that participate in that program. And again, the students are issued progress reports and based on their IEP goals, and it was also reported that 100% of the students met their goals. And if you're wondering, typically, I mean, the purpose of extended school year is for a student to maintain where they left off and not lose skills over the summer. So a lot of times the goals are tailored towards maintenance and with the hopes of improving, if possible. But the main purpose of the ESY programs are to avoid that loss that happens over the summer for special needs kids. They had a couple of new classes over the summer. One was specialized for autism, and the other one was a career education program for the older students who are approaching that transition point from SACID to the workplace. Let's see. Some other more and more programs, summer programs in SACID are focusing on academics and collecting data, as all districts do, and so they're integrating a lot of that into their programs. And they're also considering developing the possibility of a tutoring program for students who do not qualify for extended school year programs over the summer. I'm not sure what type of form that would make, but they're at least looking into it as a way to service students who kind of fall outside the net of SACID programming and your regular classroom. And I think that's important with the loss of summer school classes in districts. SACID also applied for and was awarded a vocational grant as part of the ARRA funding, and that was funding a couple of positions that will aid students in particular with social and emotional challenges in transition programs that get them from school and into the workplace. And this is really an area of great need when it comes to special needs programs. Kids get lots and lots and lots and lots of support all the way through their schooling, and then they get to the end and there's nothing there for them. So these transition programs are a really important component and something that deserves a lot of focus, and so they're starting to really look at that. And I attended last night was SACID is also doing their strategic planning process, so I attended their first meeting, and they're doing a process of storyboarding, and I don't know if you've ever done that. It was kind of the first time I actually participated. It was an interesting process, and they had parents and teachers and board members and district representatives there. And so it was nice to have a process that was very user-friendly for everyone involved. You didn't have to sit there and feel like you needed to know all the buzzwords and ins and outs of IEPs and special needs and everything, but you're just able to focus on those kind of larger balcony issues, as IASB would put it. So it was an enjoyable evening, and it was good to meet a lot of people that participate in our programs. Their programs are really hidden away from our districts, and I think that's, something that would be beneficial for SACIT and each individual member district to work on, to really promote the programs and the services that are provided. I think they do get lost just due to the nature of the way they're utilized. So, and I think that's it for that report.
Well, thank you for that. Okay, moving on to finance.
The first report we'll start out with is our food service report for the month of August and September. And unfortunately, revenues are down 20%, or about $22,000 for the first month and a half of school. And we did have fewer days in this time period this year than we did last year, which can account for some of the difference. Our vending revenue was down because we didn't have summer school programs in our buildings this year. One of the areas of concern are the paid lunches, student a la carte, and again, our vending. So some of the things that I'm going to start looking into is trying to figure out some reasons why those numbers are down. Are fewer children participating due to not participating due to economic factors? Is it resulting of more students being free and reduced? Are students not liking our food? So those are some of the things that, as we start getting into this, I'm going to start to look at and see if we can address some of the reasons, or at least have some good rationale for why we're seeing this type of trend, and also just seeing if maybe particularly, we allow students to carry over their balance from one year to another for their lunch payments. So was this a year in particular where they had a lot of money left in their lunch account to start the current year?
Just a quick question or observation. If memory serves correctly, in the 09 school year, we started a week earlier. Could it be that this is a week less of numbers?
That's what I said. There were less. Yeah, that's what I
So-
said. There were less days in this period this year than last year.
And do these percentage changes represent or reflect
Well, they're just strictly.
just a straight calculation?
Just a straight calculation. And
So
again,
we-
so a percentage can be misleading. Again, it's not a weighted percentage. So, and that's
Okay.
really what we need to see. Sometimes you need to look at the dollar amount
Right.
versus the percentage as well. So those are some of the things that, as, we just got these numbers in on Friday, and so we're going to start looking into some of this to really understand, obviously, if participation, if it's because of what we're serving or whatever, we want to obviously make some changes. If it's, due to economic conditions, there's not really anything we can do at this point with that. So we'll begin to look into that and try and determine what's driving some of this, and see when we get another month of data under our belt too, and see if that trend is changing. Overall expenditures are just about 4% lower than at this point in time. And a lot of that is really due to, we didn't make any big, our equipment purchases were a little bit less during this time frame. Some of our food purchases were less, and again, that's sometimes just due to the timing of invoice receipt of invoices and things like that. So again, continuing to monitor that, and making sure that, we are going to be on target with our food service revenue going forward. And then the next report, there's the summary of activity accounts and fund balances for each of those is attached for your review. And then in terms of fund balance as of September 30th, in all funds, we have an ending fund balance of $18.6 million. And again, fund balance is just really merely at one particular point in time. We had, tax receipts in the month of September that increased those balances at that point in time. And then the statement of position is also attached for your review. And again, we continue to hold a lot of our funds at Clarendon Hills Bank, again, because our rate of return is much higher there than we can get by investing in certificates of deposit through some of our other service providers. We did have a couple of maturities this month in the investments, and again, you can see we're not holding very many CD investments out there because, again, these were done, some of them were done over a year ago, and the rates, were 1.75, 1.85%. We're not seeing anything like that at this point in time. If you're lucky, if you're getting about maybe a 0.8 for a year-long CD. So, and we're getting, keeping our money liquid, and doing this well. So, and then the next piece that I have for you is the budget evaluation. And so, again, in terms of revenues overall for the district, tax collections in the month of September amounted to a little over 40% of the 2009 levy. To date, we've collected 91.5% of the 2009 levy. We'll have some more payments coming in. We had a few more payments, another payment coming in October. We'll have another one coming in November. And so we should run into our, 99% collection rate. And then we received 44% of the taxes budgeted for FY11 so far to date. In terms of the education fund, revenues are 4.37% higher than the prior 3-year average and 3.11% higher than last year. Again, the receipt of prior year revenues continues to skew those averages. We did receive several payments for FY10 in September, and those are listed in detail for you. We're still waiting on almost $173,000 of our FY10 payments in the Ed Fund. And then the state vouchered $272,000 of our FY11 payments, which we have yet to receive. So we're continuing that trend of late payments again this fiscal year. General state aid, though, is being paid according to schedule. In the Operations and Maintenance Fund and Life Safety, revenues are 12% higher than the 3-year average and 4.5% higher than last year. And a lot of this is attributable to the budgeting of interest income and interest transfers, and then the receipt of income for maturities. We budgeted $218,000 less for interest transfers from working cash into the O&M fund this year. And we also budgeted less interest income. So again, that's skewing those averages because you're taking your receipts over a smaller number. Transportation fund, revenues are 6.45% higher than the 3-year average and 1.61% higher than last year. We are still waiting on our payments for the 3rd quarter of regular and special ed transportation. And the state has vouchered almost $100,000 of FY11 payments that have yet to be received. In terms of expenditures in the Ed and Tort funds, these funds are really running as projected and where we would think they should be at this time of year. In the O&M fund and life safety, expenditures are well below the prior 3-year average and pretty close to on target for the prior year. And again, this is attributable to the timing of expenditures for purchase services, supplies, and the receipt of utility bills. And then in the transportation funds, expenditures are 6.39% below the 3-year average and substantially below the prior year. And this is a result of the district paying for prior year special education transportation invoices in FY10 that skewed the prior year and 3-year averages. So again, what we want to try and do is make sure that that our payment timing runs consistently from year to year. We want to try and make sure that we have all the invoices for 1 year and get it into that June 30 payment cycle. When we're paying prior year in the current year, it really tends to skew the averages. So that's something that we're gonna really be cognizant of going forward and making sure we have things from our vendors so that it's easy to do comparisons from one year to the next. And then we have attached for your review the payables for the month. Does anybody have any questions?
Just an observation that it's really difficult to understand how we're trending, where we are with all this skewing going on. So,
Yeah, and if you received all your money in the year in which it was intended, because we don't budget for our revenues, we don't budget money from FY10 into this year. And so when you're getting prior year money in, it makes it difficult. And one of the other things we can do is, we can start, potentially, maybe, the board wants to, do these reports in a little bit different fashion too. I mean, if somebody has a different way they'd like to see the reports presented, we can certainly look at that.
That borders on accrual-based accounting and.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, and you're gonna see that, as we go forward, because, next year, you'll actually be looking better because the trend is continuing for a couple years in a row.
the skewing will be consistent.
If
Or we
they
get late
start-
payments, yeah.
Right. If
We're
they
gonna look
start-
great next year.
Yeah,
because
if they
they're
start
starting to
paying
pay us
on-
all this money they owe us.
Yeah, if they start paying us on time the next year, then it's gonna be the other way. So it's just, you have to be cognizant of what money's coming in and which year it's for.
One other question, I didn't have an opportunity to ask you before we got in here this evening, but a couple meetings ago, you mentioned that our workman's comp expenses were up quite a bit, and we were gonna start doing some investigating on if there's any way to rein that in, do something different. Have we started that process? or do you-
We're going to be doing a survey and filling out with our provider. I went to a
Okay.
seminar last week for that and do some training with some of our staff and review some of the safety things. It's really making sure that our staff are following best practices when they're working. And
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Are we ready to do the expenses?
I just,
Oh, sorry.
yeah, go ahead. We can do the expenses. I just noticed that our accountants filed for an extension on their report.
Yeah,
filing.
I didn't actually finish. I didn't know if you had any other questions on
No,
this stuff, but.
no, I'm sorry.
Yes, unfortunately, we do not have a draft of our audit yet, and I will be making a call to our CPA firm on a daily basis from this point forward to find out when we will receive that report. And they filed an extension for November 15th.
Okay, anything else? All right, then, in terms of the approval of the October 2010 expense report, any questions before we? Then the chair will entertain a motion to approve the bills for the month of October 2010 as presented in attachment number F4 in the amount of $1,150,539.52.
So moved.
Second.
And roll, please.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mrs. Luback?
Yes.
Mrs. Hancock?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes.
Mr. Charleston?
Yes.
Ms. Casey?
Yes.
Okay, are there any other public comments?
Good evening, I'm Gary Armstrong. I've been sitting here tonight listening to the superintendent conversation. And it's nice that everybody's very concerned about the community and the taxpayers and the parents and everybody involved, but it seems like we've decided now tonight to move forward, to spend money we don't have without even asking us what we felt. Mr. Charleston, you pointed out tonight that one of the core things a school board member does is selecting the superintendent. Well, another question then is, I mean, in 6 months, there's the potential of 3 other people sitting here. So do we allow almost half the board to make the decision for the future of the board when they may not even be here in 6 months?
I would hope whoever those people are considering would participate in that process vigorously.
And they would like to, but you've already agreed to spend money, so you haven't even asked the
I think there
taxpayers what they want to
will
do.
absolutely be an opportunity for community involvement in that process. I think you heard that from everybody at that table.
Would have been nice to have heard before we agreed to spend money that we don't have to get the taxpayers' opinion of what's going on in the district. That's what I think. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other public comments? Okay, then the chair will entertain a motion to enter into closed session for the purpose of discussing negotiations and confidential personnel issues.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Charleston?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes.
Mrs. Hancock?
Yes.
Mrs. Luback?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Casey?
Yeah, I know that there will not be a vote, but I did want to point out something that's in the, in our board, that there is the State of the School District address on November 10th at 2010, 11:30 to 1:30.
Where at?
The Bohemian Crystal Restaurant. And again, that will be it will be chamber-sponsored, and it will be our district, District 201, and Marker District, and that.
November 10th?
November 10th, 2010, and that, I believe, is videotaped and televised
Yes.
through the village.
Right, it will be
But-
recorded.
Recorded, yeah. Okay, sorry. Meeting adjourned.